Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Tri-City Iranian Cultural Society, I would like to warmly thank Mr. Ron Mckinnon and Zoe Moyer for joining us today. من میخواستم فارسی هم خدمت شما عزیزان معرفی کنم کاندیداهامون رو و بعد خانم ارغوان میان و سوالهایی رو که برامون ارسال شده از شما از کاندیداهامون خواهند پرسید. جناب آقای رام مکنن از حوزه انتخاباتی کوکویتلم پر کوکویتلم کاندید هستند برای مجلس فدرال و خانم رویزر از حوزه انتخاباتی کوکویتلم و پورتمودی کاندید شدند که در انتخابات حضور خواهند داشت.
Good evening, Ron, Zoe. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. با سلام به همگی، مرسی که امروز شب با ما هستین. از طرف انجمن ترایسیتی ایرانیان میخوام بهتون خوش آمد بگم و چند تا سوال هستش که ممبرها برای ما فرستادن و من سوالا رو از ران و زوی میکنم. بعد میتونیم باز کنیم که شما هر سوالی داشتین بعدش ازشون بپرسیم. So once again, Ron, Zoe, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight and giving us your time. Ron, why don't I give you the floor first to introduce yourself, and then we'll pass it to Zoe.
Well, thank you. I, of course, am Ron Mckinnon. I'm the incumbent Member of Parliament for Port Coquitlam, and the Liberal Party of Canada candidate for the same riding in this current election. I thank the Tri-Cities Iranian Cultural Society for the invitation to be here tonight. And I look forward to answering the questions. And this is certainly an important election. All elections are important, but I think none more important than this particular one. It shall be a watershed election in our country, and the questions that we're going to answer today, I believe, are very important to that path forward. So now I would thank you all and turn the matter over to my colleague Zoe Moyer.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you, Argy. It is my great pleasure to be here, and I sincerely thank the Iranian cultural community for inviting us here. My name is Zoe Moyer, and I am running to be our next Member of Parliament in the riding of Port Moody, Coquitlam. For those that don't know me, I've served in local government for the past 14 years. 11 years on Port Moody City Council, and the last 3 years as a Coquitlam School trustee. But of course, like many of us in local government, I've also worked in business. My husband and I have started 3 businesses in the Tri-Cities in the past 15 years, and I've also worked in healthcare. And like Ron said, I recognize that this is one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. We know that our sovereignty, our security, our future as a nation is at stake. And this is why I put my name forward. And I am extremely proud to be sitting up here next to Ron Mckinnon, and of course to be part of the Liberal Party and Team Mark Carney. So thank you very, very much.
First, we'll kick it off with the hottest topic, inflation. Ron, maybe I'll have you answer this one first, and then we'll kind of go in order if that works. So, after nearly a decade in government, the cost of living continues to rise. Groceries, housing, rent, and everyday essentials are harder to afford. On top of that, the Canadian dollar has weakened, making imported goods even more expensive. So what makes this time different, and why should people trust that the Liberal Party can finally deliver meaningful relief and restore economic confidence when so many are still feeling squeezed?
Well, thank you for the question. I'd like to say, to start with, that the economy is actually behaving very well. We've had, for the last 10 years, we've had employment levels at the lowest levels for 30 years. There are certainly challenges that present themselves to us at this time due to the erratic policies of Mr. Trump. These policies are going to be inflationary, and we have the advantage going forward as the Liberal Party. We have one of the world's top economists at the helm. He will guide us through the chaos that will ensue in the wake of Mr. Trump's policies. And he will help us to navigate and build a stronger, robust economy in Canada. One of the key factors there will be he's met with all the premiers of all the provinces and territories, and he has arranged, he has plans that by July, I believe it is, we will have a single economy across the country. We're removing the interprovincial trade barriers that have been a detriment to doing business in Canada. As a start, that's a start. As we go on, of course, we are also expanding our markets, our interest into Asia and Europe. Mr. Carney is building on his relationships there and his recognition as a world recognized economist to start to enhance our relationships with the countries in Europe and in Asia so that we can expand our markets there. Because we know full well now that we cannot count on the United States to be our market of choice just because it's easy and close. We recognize that it's a vulnerability that we have to work around. And we know that we have partners in Asia and in Europe who are more than willing to work with us. And as Mr. Carney said, if the United States is no longer willing to be a leader on the world stage, we're more than willing and able to take up that role.
Great. Thanks very much, Ron. Moving on to kind of pulling on that same thread onto economic policies. So Zoe, I'll ask this next question of you. So the current government has had years to deliver on promises around economic growth and affordability, yet many Canadians still feel like they're not seeing the benefits. So what will you do differently this time, and how can voters know that these plans will improve things for everyday people?
Thanks for the question, Argy. Well, I think really to build on what Ron has said, speaking about Mr. Carney, we have never had a prime minister like him. I mean, we can't forget that he really helped lead us through the 2008 recession. He helped avert Brexit, the economy in the UK from an incredible disaster. So he has the experience. And I just want to hearken back to Mark Carney's book for a moment. It's called Values. He wrote it in 2021. And it talks about fairness and equality and resilience and humility and, all of these things that will make our country great. I think that Mr. Carney is deeply interested in supporting the middle class. He recognizes that the middle class are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. He realized that youth need supports. Louder. Okay, got it. Sorry about that. But of course, on day one, he eliminated the consumer carbon tax. And already we've seen gas prices come down. But he wants to do that for many, many areas of our economy at the macro level and at the micro level. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Zoe. Moving on to the next topic around immigration. This is once again another big topic for the Iranian community. A lot of us being immigrants, I myself immigrated to Canada with my family back in 2001. So Ron, I'll throw this question to you, and Zoe, feel free to jump in as well. But most Canadians value immigration, of course, but there's growing concern about how rapid growth is affecting housing, healthcare, and other services. So how do you plan to restore public confidence and that immigration is being managed responsibly and sustainably?
So as you said, immigration is critical to our economy, it's critical to our growth, it's critical to our productivity, but it needs to be adjusted by times to meet the needs, to meet the limitations of other aspects, as you mentioned, housing and so forth. So in the fall, we reduced caps considerably because of that. The immigration levels were at that time too high. And as we continue to build out our ability to provide services, as we continue to build housing and so forth, we will look at this, we will adjust things as necessary. But I think it's important that we do this with consultation with industry, so that we we stay in sync with their needs as well as the limitations that we have in our society for how we can keep up with the housing requirements and the provision of medical services and all that sort of thing. So we need to work in balance with the industry and with the needs of the society.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, as Canadians, we recognize that part of what makes Canada great is our diversity. It's our mosaic of cultures. It's the Iranian community in that picture. Many years ago, Fred had asked me to write to nominate him as Canada's greatest immigrant. So I wrote a paper, and he had many supporters behind it, and it was successful because we need to recognize people that make our country great, and Fred Sufi is one of these. But there's that push and pull. So with having a cap on immigration right now, that's to make sure that housing and infrastructure can catch up, right? So that we have what we need to support our growing population.
That's great. Thanks, Zoe. I want to probe on this one a little bit because I think one of the biggest issues that the Iranian community is facing is, as you likely know, Iran is one of the most educated countries in the world with probably the highest number of doctors, engineers, etc. And so, especially in recent years, there's been a lot of Iranian immigrants that have been moving to Canada, but they're not able to transfer those skills directly, and they're having a very difficult time finding jobs because of that. So do you have any plans on kind of simplifying the transfer of skills for immigrants that are coming to the country?
This is a very important question. It's a question that I've had conversations about with many of my colleagues. Part of the problem with Canadian, the way Canada is organized is we have individual provinces that do things in their own way. As we break down the barriers, the interprovincial trade barriers, we also need to break down the barriers in terms of qualifications so that physicians and surgeons and nurses and whatnot can move around the country freely. But I've also had conversations with groups, immigrant groups, medical student groups and so forth, who expressed the very clear need that we have to do more for recognition of foreign credentials. And in fact, I had a cab driver in Ottawa who said he was a neurosurgeon from Brazil. This is an appalling situation. We have to do better. We have to work with the provinces to make this happen better. We have to work with the various colleges of physicians and surgeons who tend to be protective of their professions so that we can break down these barriers so we can start to recognize better the many, many thousands of foreign trained professionals, not only medical profession, but other professionals who need to come to our country, who we want to come to our country to help us build it and make us a stronger country for the 21st century.
Yeah, if I could just sort of jump in there, being a school trustee, we have a shortage of teachers in the district, and having worked in healthcare, we have a shortage of healthcare professionals. So you're absolutely right. I don't have Mr. Carney's full platform yet, but I know that a lot of what will be involved is making Canada more competitive and making sure that we fill some of these gaps. So I think he's going to be looking at many, many levers. As you said, Argy, that Iranians are some of the most educated people in the world. One of the things that I came to learn while working with artists in the Iranian community was that even the language is much more nuanced. The language, for example, love, isn't just one word. It has many, many, many words. And I think that, Iranians are people with a very high emotional EQ, so an EQ, but also an IQ. And we really want to tap into that to help make our country even stronger.
I mentioned that the way Canada is built, we have all the provinces have their own areas of expertise, of authority. And that's one of the challenges as a federal government. We want to recognize those different areas of jurisdiction, but we have to bring them all together in a common view. We did that in the 60s for Medicare. We have been doing that for dental care and pharmacare. And it's an ongoing discussion that we have to have with the provinces. And I believe the provinces are interested in doing so. So Mr. Carney has shown that he's ready, willing, and able to talk with the premiers. And they've been very cooperative in looking for solutions going forward.
Great. Thank you both very much. Moving on to the next topic, that's on education. So on education, especially around SOGI content, there's a real feeling amongst Iranian parents that decisions are being made without their input. So how would you ensure that schools remain inclusive while also respecting parents who feel left out of the conversation?
Yeah.
So you mentioned SOGI?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, once again, this is a provincial area. The federal government doesn't govern the curricula for schools and so forth. However, we do have a very intense interest in making sure that all Canadians the rights of all Canadians are respected, that the rights and freedoms that are guaranteed in the Constitution are there for everybody. I think that it is critically important that parents take part in the parent-teacher associations, get involved with their teachers, talk to their teachers, make sure that their wishes are well known to them, but also to reach out to their political representatives, such as myself, but more in this case, more particularly the members of the legislature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being a school trustee, so SOGI was part of sort of an anti-bullying campaign, and it's really about inclusivity. And there's a couple of things here. One is that, as Ron said, making sure that people feel safe and respected. We know that students perform better when they feel included, when they feel safe at school. And there is a whole negative campaign around SOGI suggesting that we are planting ideas in the minds of children. And nothing could be further from the truth. The school board wants to stay very neutral, so they don't fight fire with fire. This is provincially mandated. We fulfill on that. But we need to consider that this is really about being a kinder, gentler, more inclusive society, where tolerance is part of the equation. I think some of what's happening in Iran is excluding the tenets of that tolerance, unfortunately. So it's really about making sure that every Canadian is feeling safe, respected, and heard. It's not about planting ideas in the minds of children about who they should or shouldn't be or how they should identify. So just wanted to be very clear about that. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Moving on to the next topic, that's on safety. So the Iranian community is very concerned about drugs and crime. Where do you stand on safe supply and the decriminalization of drugs?
I think one of the things we have to be fully aware of is that there are many people who have, the problem with drugs is fundamentally a medical situation. People need to be treated for addictions. They need to be treated in an inclusive manner. They need to be housed and so forth. These people are ill. What we have to do, though, is we have to be very aggressive about people who will exploit these illnesses, who will take these victims and make large amounts of money off of them. In that respect, the criminal element needs to be squashed. We need to interdict drugs at the border. We need to make sure that illicit drug supplies are stopped. And in that respect, of course, we're enhancing the RCMP by 1,000 people to help protect our borders. We're adding 1,000 people to the CBSA to also protect our border. So even though we've already ramped up patrols of the border and reduced the amount of guns and drugs and so forth who have been illicitly crossing the border, we need to do more. But we have to recognize that people who have addictions are sick. They have problems that need to be helped. They need to be treated. And anything we can do to reduce the harm to them is a good thing. I will draw attention to my private member's bill that I presented in the 42nd Parliament. It passed unanimously at all stages. What it does is prevent, if people are in a circumstance where someone's in a medical emergency because of a drug overdose, if they call for help for that person, they cannot be charged for possession offenses. And what this does is keep people alive, because we can't help people when they're dead. So if people are afraid of calling for help because they're going to be arrested for being in possession of drugs, they're not going to call for help. They're going to take their friend out and dump them in a snowbank and call for an ambulance. And seconds matter. So this is a case of harm reduction. And I know for a fact, and I've had people in my office who have said that their son in one case was alive today because of my bill. This is what we have to do. We have to recognize that there are people who are out there who are trying to exploit people's failings, people's problems with drugs, and then there are people who have those problems, who are just trying to stay alive. And we have to look after both sides of that equation.
Argy, can I weigh into that one? Can you hear me? Okay. Now, thank you, thank you. Education is really, really key. I want to give a shout out to a young woman that lives in Port Moody. Her name is Chloe Goodison, and she is doing incredible work in educating young people around drugs. Her company is called Naloxone, and she is really talking to young people about the use, the harm, and about what to do if someone is overdosing. So that's one. The federal government is investing up to $1.6 billion in increased border security. And that is to stop the flow, not the flow of drugs going into Canada, going from Canada to the United States. So contrary to what President Trump suggested, it's really to stop the flow the other way, to prevent weapons and harmful drugs coming into this country. You asked a question about legalization, decriminalization. So I don't use any substances. I don't drink alcohol, and I don't use cannabis. The federal government passed legislation around cannabis, and I can tell you this, it was a good one. Cannabis is impossible to control, and it needs to be in exactly the same basket as alcohol. But also, in the case of medicinal cannabis, we want people that require this to get it safely, to be able to access it in a dignified way, and we want it controlled. And then there are the harmful drugs like fentanyl, like heroin, like crack cocaine, the kinds of drugs that destroy lives, corrupt communities, attract all kinds of gang warfare. Those are the kinds of things the government is cracking down on. And as Ron said, also providing support to people that are addicted so that we can get them off of drugs. And that's our best defense amongst us. So education, greater protections, and of course prevention.
Great. Thank you both. Final question from me.
A fun one.
Looking ahead, so after nearly 10 years in government, many in the Tri-Cities are wondering what real measurable progress they can expect, especially for on issues like transit expansion, housing affordability, and healthcare access. So what is one specific commitment you're making to improve life for people in this community? And if elected and re-elected, how should residents hold you accountable if that promise doesn't materialize?
Well, I don't think I can limit it to one thing.
Good answer.
I mean, to start with, as I mentioned before, we are going to be treating housing as a national crisis the way we did after, as I'm told, after the Second World War, before I was born. But, we are going to get back as a government into the business of building houses. We're going to be increasing the pace of home construction to reach a level of about 500,000 units per year. In doing that, we will be promoting prefabrication, we're promoting innovation. We will actually be promoting the more use of Canadian materials such as wood and steel and aluminum that's being tariffed across the border. We can keep it home, we can use it here. This is going to have a dramatic effect on the availability of housing, the cost of housing. And there was another key point I was going to have in there. I'll get back to that, I'm sure. So housing is important, and housing is recognized as important. We've been working on housing over 10 years. We've had the National Housing Strategy for quite some time. If you go around the Lower Mainland now, you can see all kinds of construction. I can't claim credit for all of it, but I know that we've had we've been a factor in part of it. Some of these things take years to develop, and we've been spending years trying to do that. So we have been working on it. It's coming along, and it's getting there. In terms of transit, we have committed, I think, $15 billion nationally for enhancing transit across the country. And of that, we just announced, I think, 3 weeks ago, $1.6 billion, I believe it was, to support the SkyTrain expansion out to Langley. So we recognize the importance of transit, not only for getting people to move around from place to place within this bustling community, but also its importance in reducing the impact on climate change. So, and I think I could come up with more, but I'll pass this off to.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the fun question, Hargy. Yeah, housing. Ron was talking about housing. You know, last year, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation predicted that Canada needed an additional 3.5 million homes for our current population by 2030. And that number was felt by some, including CIBC, that it was too low, that actually the real number was 5.4 million. So when Mr. Carney talks about really delivering on housing, doubling the pace, the only way that we can do that is really through factory-built housing and looking at sustainable materials, so accelerating the speed in which that happens, providing billions of dollars, huge amounts of money to the housing to make sure that people have the right to housing, that young people have a hope of living in our communities, not commuting 4 hours a day combined, but that we really get serious about housing. So that's one. But all of that, you know, the talk about electrifying our transportation network that Mr. Carney is talking about, that gets people out of their cars. And we know that the fewer steps to transit, the more likely people are to use it. And that rapid transit piece is really key. So there's the fewer steps, and then there's the time to your destination. But you know, I would say that some of the promises around the environment, you know, carbon capture, I mentioned electrifying the transportation grid, investing in green infrastructure, green industry, green innovation, investing in money towards jobs, towards retraining, all of those things that will make us stronger, make sure that people are equipped to do the jobs that we need for a green economy into the future, gives me a lot of hope. When Mark talked about the environment in his book, Values, he mentioned being at the climate summit when young Greta Thunberg first spoke. And you know, as a city councillor at the time, I was incredibly moved. Many people were. She was this young warrior, really, and making sure that adults were presenced to the fact that climate change was real and that we were potentially taking away a sustainable planet if we didn't get serious. Mr. Carney is dedicated to a future where we have sustainable green wetlands and grasslands and making sure that animals, plants, that we can sustain all of that. You know, he's deeply interested in those things, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his full platform that should be out in and around the time of the debate. But I know that he's making the environment a top priority. Of course, given the trade war that's happening south of the border, it's taken a lot of the focus with this war cabinet, caretaking cabinet that we currently have. But I'm really looking forward to strengthening some of the promises made around real climate action, and you know, making sure that young people feel like they have, you know, that they have a lot of hope, that we restore that hope in the future. So, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
I want to add,
Please do.
the point I forgot about before was crown land. So one of the things we're going to be doing to encourage the growth, or the faster pace of construction, is in some cases we're going to be able to free up crown land. I would also mention that one of our policies up to now, and I believe going forward in the future, is a thing called the Housing Accelerator Fund. One of the problems with getting all people interested in building houses is cities have to come up with infrastructure for them, and it's not enough to say to everybody, go out and build 100,000 houses if the cities can't provide services. So the Housing Accelerator Fund is a way of helping the cities to do that. We just recently gave the city of Port Coquitlam, I think it was $10.3 million for that very purpose. And I believe the city of Coquitlam has had $25 million over the last year specifically for that, so that they can make the services and the subdivisions and the roads and whatnot available so that people can build houses for them.
Yeah, the cost of land is enormously expensive. I don't know that Port Moody Coquitlam has a lot of buildable crown land available, but I also see this as partnerships between the federal government, the provincial government, and municipalities to really work together to deliver on that and identify sites where they can put housing. Because if you really reduce the cost of the land, or if that's not really a big factor, then of course, especially when you're bringing down the cost of actually building, the constructing of the house, you have a winning recipe. So across Canada, identifying those sites will be really, really helpful. Oh.
So in this broader picture of massive numbers of more housing and access to it and so forth, this speaks very strongly towards affordability. And this is very important to Mr. Carney and to us as well. People have to be able to afford to live, to buy a home. And one of the first things I heard when I took this job 10 years ago was people came to me and said, my kids can't buy a home near me, right? So this is a problem that's been underway for 10 years, which is one of the reasons why at least 10 years, which is one of the reasons we started the housing, the National Housing Strategy, and why we're going to carry on, we're going to expand on that, we're going to make it into an even higher priority with this, treating housing as a national crisis as it was done before. So these are various things that we're going to do, but I think on top of that, as we build our relationship stronger with Europe and with Asia, as we take advantage of the economic opportunities that the crazy stuff behind in the South is mandating, I think it's a great opportunity for Canadians to develop new businesses, to make money, and to profit on developing whole new markets. So I think on the whole, it's about making Canada stronger, making us more united, making us more stronger.